Alright, so Chapter 5, Section 1, we start into probabilities. Throughout this chapter, some things we're going to be able to do with StatCrunch, some things we will have to use a calculator for. So I do have a calculator that'll show some of the steps that I'm taking. You don't need to have a TI-84. Just a basic calculator will do. Make sure for test purposes, though, when you go in to take your test, you have something besides your phone as a calculator for this probability section. But again, something basic. Basic little TI-30 would be fine. So I was going to look at some of the problems from Section 1. Here's my basic calculator when I need it. And so a lot of definitions to read in this first section, so please make sure you're reading through the section. It asks to construct a probability model for rolling a pair of fair die. The outcomes are 2 through 12. So when you roll die, you can get 2 through 12. So it says, explain why the probability of rolling a 9 is not 1/11th, right? And so it's getting you to think about, well, do I have equal chances of rolling each one of these numbers? So it's really, the questions are thought-provoking. But again, I know that there's only two ways to get an 11, a 5 and a 6 or a 6 and a 5. But to get a different number, like maybe a 6, there's a lot more ways of getting a 6. 1, 5, 5, 1, 4, 2, 2, 4, 3, 3. And so the likelihood of getting a 6 should be greater than getting 11. So they don't have equal chances. Another one I want to look at is something that I think we can use StatCrunch for. So jump into number 10, is trying to figure out the probabilities. Well, first to find the probabilities, we're doing a probability model based off of data. So this is from an experiment, not a theoretical probability. Like when you roll a dice, the probability of rolling a heads is a half. So if I did open this in StatCrunch, like I need to get a total number of people. So I could use StatCrunch to help me out here just to find a total. And we can do that in StatCrunch. If I do stat summary stats and just looking at the columns, like there is an option in here for just a sum if I wanted to add it up. So I have a sum of 4691. So I can use StatCrunch and Excel capabilities to compute something. And I want to take my frequencies and divide them by 4691. So this would be a way 4691. There we go. To get a column of percentages or probabilities. And so when we do this, this is a way to use StatCrunch to help us get our answers for something like this question. Number 12 had an interesting word that I wanted to look at, and it talks about something being unusual. Was it unusual for this player to hit a home run to the left field? And so if we look at left field, it was, and 1 went to left field. So 1 out of 65. So looking at our calculator, 1 out of 65, like the probability of that happening is 1% of the time, 1.5% of the time, or 0.015. Kind of the rule of thumb is if something is underneath 5%, we consider it unusual. And so when it comes to this question, I would say that it would be unusual because it happens less than 5% of the time. It's kind of like our cutoff. My unusual may be different than your unusual. So in the stats world, we kind of talk about 5%. 0.05 being our point of unusualness. And then looking at number 15 in the text, or in the homework, it talks about, and again, this is just a thought-provoking question. So, do you think that the die is loaded? So I got 65 for 1, so I rolled it 400 times, and these numbers aren't the same. But do you think it's going to be the same? Do you think every time when you roll it, like if I roll it 6 times, will I always get 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6? Will we get some differences in the counts? So these all look to be around 70. We've got a 60 there. But again, you would think if you have 400 and you divide it by 6, so 66, 67, so these are all kind of around there. Like 3's maybe a little low, but that's not alarming to me. Like I don't think that I'm dealing with a shady die. So again, some thought-provoking questions to try to interpret the information. But please, for this section, read the chapter, look at the definitions, because most of section 1 is definitional.